Hello everybody. Sorry if I look a little bit rough. I'm under the weather today. The UK government and police have acted to uncover the facts about two controversial figures after pressure from media, including the Whip Line. The arrest of Peter Mandelson, ethics inquiry into Labour Together, and also continued questions over the appointment of Dame Antonia Romeo as Cabinet Secretary demonstrate the soft power of media like my site. We cannot compel the government or police to act, but they do because the sustained exposure of information on these issues tells political leaders they cannot ignore the concerns raised with impunity. On Labour Together and its former director, now Cabinet Office Minister Josh Simons, the BBC tells us the Prime Minister has asked his ethics advisor to investigate Minister Josh Simons following claims the think tank he used to run commissioned a report which looked into the background of journalists. Labour Together, which helped Sir Keir Starmer get elected as Labour leader, paid APCO Worldwide at least £30,000 to investigate the sourcing, funding and origins of a Sunday Times story about undeclared donations at the think tank ahead of the 2024 election. Sir Keir had already asked the Cabinet Office to investigate Simons last week. However, more than 20 Labour MPs had called for a fully independent investigation, pointing out that Simons is a minister in the Cabinet Office. The implication here is that Starmer wanted a whitewash, but MPs from his own party, having listened to concerns raised in the country, demanded an independent inquiry instead. That being said, the PM's independent advisor on ministerial standards, Sir Laurie Magnus, investigates alleged breaches of the ministerial code, so can only look at Simon's actions as a minister and not his time at Labour Together before he was an MP. So, the newly announced inquiry won't provide facts on Labour Together's behaviour during the lengthy period it was agitating against Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, putting Starmer in as Corbyn's replacement, and transforming, some would say purging, the party thereafter. Expect more demands for even more robust investigations, depending on what the two current inquiries turn up. They're happening already. The BBC says Labour MPs welcomed the ethics investigation, but some called for a wider investigation into Labour Together more broadly, rather than just the actions of Simons. John McDonnell said it needed to get the full truth of what went on, adding, "This at the moment does not pass the smell test." In response, Darren Jones said the independent advisor's remit was to investigate ministers and any questions about what happened at Labour Together were a matter for the think tank's board, prompting McDonnell to shout, "Whitewash." Mandelson was arrested yesterday, February 23, 2026, on suspicion of having committed misconduct in public office by passing market-sensitive government information to the late convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. It followed the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, who has been accused of doing exactly the same thing. Logically, this happened because somebody realised it would be difficult to justify different treatment from Mandelson than that dealt out to a younger brother of the king. Meanwhile, Starmer appointed Dame Antonia Romeo, Dame Antonia Romeo as Cabinet Secretary, the top post in the UK civil service, despite a revelation that she faced multiple bullying complaints when she was the UK's Consul General in New York, rather than a single complaint as had been stated by the Cabinet Office. The BBC's report stated that 47% of staff in New York said they had experienced bullying in the workplace in an annual staff survey, the highest level ever recorded anywhere in the Foreign Office. It is understood that in most government departments or divisions, the figure is usually in low single figures. The survey covered a 12-month period, including 3 months in which Dame Antonia was in post. The report added, "The BBC has been told the Foreign Office's investigation concluded there was a case for Dame Antonia to answer about her behaviour towards colleagues, but there was no case to answer about what was called financial probity and is understood to refer to expenses." A Whitehall source said, "The fact that selective excerpts are now being resurfaced, almost a decade on, to substantiate vexatious anonymous briefings from disgruntled individuals is frankly unconscionable." If there was a bullying case to be answered, and it wasn't handled properly, then that statement is not true, and this public servant is not in the clear. Nevertheless, Starmer appointed her to the Cabinet Secretary role 4 days ago. The BBC report on that stated that he was impressed by her ability to get things done. Many, especially in the civil service, may interpret that as endorsement of a bullying culture being brought to that organisation. All three of those issues raise serious questions about Keir Starmer's leadership. Starmer appointed Mandelson into the UK's highest diplomatic office, despite knowing of his relationship with Epstein. He has now appointed Romeo to the UK's highest civil service post, despite knowing that concerns about her behaviour have not been resolved, no matter what the Cabinet Office says. And the investigation into Labour Together casts doubt on the activities of the organisation that put him into 10 Downing Street in the first place. These issues have caused immense ill feeling among the public, and sites like the Whip Line have been reflecting that, as have the wider mainstream media. So, pressure has been accumulating outside normal power structures, keeping stories alive long enough that they can't simply be managed away. Institutional actors rarely move at the first whisper. They move when allegations are persistent, documentary evidence enters the public domain, mainstream outlets begin to cover the story, and the political cost of inaction is believed to exceed the cost of action. Starmer didn't want to sack Mandelson, let alone have him arrested. He moved only after pressure made inaction untenable. He doesn't want detailed full-scale scrutiny of Romeo, and he certainly doesn't want the organisation that put him in power cast into disrepute. But public concern, reflected by sites like the Whip Line and amplified by media like The Guardian, as prominently reported by me, has made it impossible for him to shrug and ignore it. Of course, people in power don't like scrutiny. Sites like the Whip Line are sidelined by social media platforms and disparaged by authority figures. That's why we rely on the support of the people whose concerns we represent. We're working for you, and with your support, we can do that job even better.